You are on assignment.
Now, a behind-the-scenes look. Hey everybody, welcome to On Assignment, where we bring you the stories behind the stories. I'm Alex Villarreal.
And I'm Imran Siddiqui. Welcome to the show. Later in the show, Afghanistan's army will it be able to secure the country's security by 2014?
And protecting African elephants from poachers. Our correspondent in Nairobi has that story.
And as you can see behind us is Capitol Hill. That's where U.S. lawmakers are trying to figure out how to handle the nation's budget.
That's right. Before the end of the year, Congress has to find ways to trim U.S. spending. And Americans aren't the only ones who could be affected.
And we'll tell you how, but you got to stay tuned. You're watching On Assignment.
First to Afghanistan, analysts are questioning whether the Afghan army is ready to take over the country's security when NATO and U.S. forces leave in 2014. And Imran, you talked to VOA Islamabad correspondent Sharon Bain to get some answers.
Yes, Alex, I did have a chance to speak to her. Sharon went to Kabul to find out how the Afghan military is preparing recruits to face the Taliban, but how will they face them alone? So let's first take a look at the top of her story.
According to NATO estimates, more than a quarter of Afghan's army left service this year, and almost 3,000 soldiers have been killed or wounded. An overwhelming majority who join are functionally illiterate. The Afghan government has been found likely to be incapable of sustaining its military facilities once most NATO troops leave in 2014. These are harsh developments for a military that will soon have to function on its own.
Sharon, U.S. and NATO forces will be leaving Afghanistan by 2014, but analysts say the Afghan army is not ready to take over as far as national security is concerned. What do you think is the state of the Afghan army right now?
Well, that's a pretty big question. I think there are a lot of efforts to get the Afghan army up and running and up to the point where it can take over its own security. So I visited the Kabul Military Training Center, where they're putting a lot of effort in teaching them how to use their weapons, giving a lot of literacy classes, for example. Right now, about, I think, 85% of those people who join are not literate. You know, there are other reports that, for example, the NATO coalition forces have said that just over a quarter of the army is leaving every year due to attrition. So the numbers are dropping off, which means they're going to have to recruit more. There was a special inspector general report that came out and said that the Afghan government doesn't have the ability to keep the logistics going. I mean, simple things like air conditioning or whatever the troops might need to keep them going in whatever situation they happen to be in, that the Afghan government is actually not capable of handling that either.
Jawed Koistani says the Defense Ministry simply does not have a plan.
We do not have any strategy on dealing with the Taliban or against the intelligence service of neighboring countries. All training of soldiers and security forces must be based on a specific strategy which will give them the morale to fight.
Tell me something, if the situation is like this, how do they expect to take over by 2014?
The United States, all the combat troops are going to leave, but my understanding and what they're discussing now under the Security Pact discussions is that there will be a number of trainers and advisors who stay behind. These are the people who are going to keep helping and guiding the Afghan security forces. So it's not like all the combat troops are leaving, but there is going to be a contingent of people who are left behind to guide and to advise. And there are, deals in the works to make sure that they can keep the Afghan security forces going.
What do you think is the difference right now if you compare your reporting now compared to last time when you were there?
Well, I was there not too long ago, so it's not going to be any drastic change. What I did see, though, was something interesting, which was the value of the Afghani going down. And I went and spoke to a bunch of businessmen, and from carpet sellers that are big export item to owner of a construction business. And I asked them, what's happening? And there was a lot of negative perception about the economy. People are really worried about what's going to happen when the troops leave. It's basically a foreign aid dependent economy. People are very worried about what's going to happen once they leave.
Thanks to Sharon. VOA's Sharon Bain in Islamabad.
We're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll talk with our very own Rebecca Ward about a special baseball league for children. You're watching On Assignment. There are thousands of baseball teams around the world for children of all ages, but the sport can be very competitive, and that leaves some kids on the sidelines. On Assignment's Rebecca Ward joins us now to talk about one league that's giving children with disabilities the chance to play. Rebecca, how did you find out about this league?
Well, my father actually, he sent me a picture of this very engaging little boy, 5 years old, who happened to be in a uniform, a baseball uniform, and standing on prosthetic legs. So I was intrigued by the story behind this little boy and wanted to find out more about it.
All right, and I know that we want to find out some more ourselves. So Rebecca, let's go ahead and take a look at your piece.
If a picture's worth 1,000 words, this one speaks volumes about the joy of childhood and being part of a team. But until a couple of years ago, not everyone in Hendersonville, North Carolina had a team on which to play, including a little boy named True.
And this is my favorite because he's got his eyes on that ball.
True came to the United States at the age of 2 from Siberia, Russia, and quickly became an avid sports fan like his older brother Bradshaw and the rest of his adopted family.
True loves baseball. He loves sports. He loves anything outdoors. He's watched his brother for years play baseball, and he sat on the sidelines and cheered him on, and he's just always wanted to play.
So True's mother, Melanie, says the family was thrilled to learn about special needs baseball. Donnie Jones co-founded the league with his brother, Chat.
I've coached Little League 15 years or better. But at the games, I would see the kids, they would have their brothers and sisters would be playing, and I would see them outside, off the field out there playing and stuff. And I don't know, it just come to me one time. I said, I don't think there's something for them to do.
There are no restrictions in age or capability, and the league has doubled in size in a year from 40 to nearly 80.
Anyone that wants to do it, I don't care what their degree of ability, we'll find a way that they get to participate fully. I enjoyed that time out there more than anything I've done. I mean, that's the most fun I've ever had on a baseball field.
It takes a lot of volunteers and the support of families to get the players on the field and around the bases. But for those involved, the game offers its own rewards.
This is more joyful to watch this than watching a big league game. It's sort of boring after a while. This isn't boring.
Melanie says she didn't hesitate to sign True up for baseball despite his prosthetic legs. As a matter of fact, she says he's quite proud of his legs, which feature characters from Star Wars.
What's your favorite part about baseball?
The hitting.
Hitting?
Yeah.
Special needs baseball in this part of North Carolina began in the spring of 2011.
We started out our first season, I had 4 teams. It was about 40 players. No problem there. Then the fall season come along, I had 6 teams. It grew that quick.
6 teams may compete in the league, but everyone's a winner at the end of the season.
I wanted these to be something they'd be proud of, and they are.
Everyone who plays gets a trophy, but on this last game of the season, there were also a couple of medals handed out for the most runs on each team. Of course, the number of runs or hits is never as important as the thrill of the game and the thrill of accomplishment.
True can do all those things. He has no limitations. He's able to do anything he sets his mind to do.
There you go!
And we're back with Rebecca Ward. Rebecca, such a heartwarming piece. You know, we saw that you were able to really spend some time watching these kids in action on the field. What struck you the most?
Well, the fact that they're kids out on a field having a great time, and just that they happen to be in wheelchairs or walking on prosthetics, it didn't really dampen the spirit at all. It was such a joyful experience. I really enjoyed it.
Well, and we enjoyed watching it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. On Assignment's Rebecca Ward. Coming up, we're going to take a break, but up next, our VOA reporter travels to the Central African Republic for a look at elephant protection efforts there. Some great video in this one you're going to want to watch. You're watching On Assignment.
In the Central African Republic, elephants are increasingly under threat. Poachers in the region are more heavily armed and are becoming more sophisticated in their attempts to kill the elephants for their ivory.
But at a wildlife reservation in the C.A.R, rangers are fighting fire with fire. VOA's correspondent based in Nairobi, Gabe Joselo, traveled to the C.A.R for a first-hand look at elephant conservation. We connected with Gabe to get the rest of the story.
The dense jungle here is home to a wide variety of wildlife, including gorillas and antelopes, as well as large numbers of forest elephants. This species, smaller than other elephants, thrives here in the protected areas of the park. Sought for their ivory, these elephants would ordinarily be at risk from poachers in such an open space, but this is a unique place.
This is Sanga Bai, a natural clearing in the forest here in Central African Republic. This is one of the biggest such clearings in all of Central Africa. It's a place where conservationists say up to 2,000 elephants pass through. They come here to root around in the mineral-rich soil. There hasn't been a poaching incident here in 2.5 years, a record that they credit to very strong presence on the ground in terms of foot patrols, which they use to scare off any poachers who might be in the area.
Gabe, conservation groups say that more elephants are being killed now than at any point in the last 2 decades. Why is this?
Yeah, we are seeing that. The numbers have just soared. You're seeing tens of thousands, up to 60,000 elephants killed across Africa each year by poachers. And the biggest cause is simply demand. You're seeing a lot of demand, mostly from East Asia, coming from China and from Thailand, especially as the economy starts to really soar in China. You're seeing a new class of people who can afford ivory, and ivory is just a very coveted item over there. So based on that, a lot of poachers and poaching groups who are becoming better organized, becoming better armed, are going out and killing elephants in huge numbers and just making a ton of money off of this illegal trade.
The rangers, or eco-guards, who protect this reserve patrol every day, sometimes spending weeks in the forest searching for poachers. They look for signs left behind by suspected intruders that can be as simple as a bent twig. This ranger, Basil Basso, has a special insight into the tactics used by poachers. He used to be one, hunting small game to feed his family.
I decided to become a ranger to protect the forest for my sons and for the future, because if not, in 10 or 20 years, it will all be gone.
The rangers here are heavily armed. They have to be to confront poachers who are slaughtering animals with automatic weapons.
What about these reports that some national armies in Africa are also involved in this?
Yeah, we have heard reports, mostly in media, that Uganda, the army in Uganda or possibly in South Sudan, have also been involved in killing animals, killing elephants in particular, but it's really hard to confirm that.
Wildlife monitors report unprecedented levels of elephant poaching in the last year due to increased demand for ivory from China and Thailand. Earlier this year, suspected Sudanese poachers killed some 200 elephants at a park in neighboring Cameroon. Anna Feistner, technical advisor here for the World Wildlife Fund, says the same Sudanese poachers are also killing elephants in the Central African Republic.
They're very well organized, highly armed, coming in on horseback. They've been doing this, I think, in the north of the country for many, many years, but they've in recent years been penetrating through Central African Republic to target the forest elephants.
And what about this ranger you talked to who was a poacher himself before?
Yeah, he was somebody from the local community, which is in this area called Bayanga. And a lot of the people in the community live off of the forest around there. They always have. And so there's already kind of a sense within the community that it's important to protect these forests. But when he was trying to feed his family as a young farmer, he would go out there and shoot mostly small game. He wasn't an elephant poacher. But he started to become convinced by conservationists in the area and just by talking to other people that it would be better to protect these forests, particularly for his children, for the next generation. So he just totally just adopted that philosophy, joined up with the rangers, and he's very proud of what he does now.
It was very remarkable watching in your piece, seeing these elephants just congregating and gathering in this area. How close were you able to get to them?
Yeah, we were right up there. I mean, I was probably about 20 meters from the closest elephant. The thing is, there in that particular park, Zanga Sanga, there's a clearing, like a natural clearing where the elephants come to gather, where they all come there to eat this mud that's very mineral rich. And the elephants actually maintain this area themselves. They tear down trees to keep the clearing the way it is. So it was just a spectacular sight to see probably 50 or 60 elephants just in this area. Just some of them, the baby elephants playing, and some of the elephants fighting and tussling. It was just something that it was just such a special sight.
And again, Gabe Joslow is VOA's correspondent in East Africa. Our thanks again to Gabe.
Here in Washington, a different kind of battle is going on these days, the budget battle. Unless the U.S. Congress acts by the year's end, federal taxes will rise dramatically, along with across-the-board spending cuts.
Analysts say the combination of tax hikes and budget cuts could send the U.S. economy back into recession, with implications for the global economy.
Now, can a divided Congress come together to forge a solution on the country's budget? VOA's Michael Bowman talked with On Assignment's Philip Alexio. Let's take a look.
Now, this is all happening, of course, while there's a recession going on in Europe in the third quarter, and China's economy is slowing down. So there certainly must be some concern around the world, and certainly within the U.S., on its effects and what that might be. How can you kind of wrap that up for us a little bit?
For many, many decades, the United States was the world's sort of economic engine. And when the United States was doing well economically, that drove global growth. When the United States was doing poorly, global growth really slowed down. We're getting beyond that point to a certain extent with the emergence of major economies like that of China. But nevertheless, if Europe's economy is on the ropes and going back into recession, if the United States continues with this dreadfully slow rate of economic growth of around 2% a year, and sometimes even less than that, the prospects for global economic growth are truly limited. And China has had its own issues in terms of growth recently.
But what are the two sides trying to do? What does the president want, and what do the Republicans want, as they try to find some sort of bipartisan agreement with what's to do here?
Ultimately, what everybody wants is to reduce the federal deficit.
Bipartisanship, it is what a recently re-elected President Barack Obama is calling for.
I'm open to compromise.
And what Speaker of the House of Representatives, Republican John Boehner, is urging.
Let's challenge ourselves to find the common ground that has eluded us.
But neither man is abandoning conflicting core positions on how to solve America's fiscal challenges.
Right now, we are running a deficit of about $1 trillion a year. The cumulative effect of the year-by-year deficits is a $16 trillion national debt, which is roughly equivalent to America's gross domestic product.
President Obama, a Democrat, wants a higher tax rate for the rich.
We have to combine spending cuts with revenue. And that means asking the wealthiest Americans to pay a little more in taxes.
Speaker Boehner opposes raising tax rates, but favors limiting tax deductions to increase government revenues.
Feeding the growth of government through higher tax rates won't help us solve the problem.
If you boost taxes, that's a disincentive for economic activity. If the federal government suddenly stops spending money, then there will be less money flowing into the economy and there will be less economic activity. So it's something of a catch-22 situation.
The partisan debate on taxes is not new. Former Republican President Ronald Reagan championed tax cuts in the 1980s. Taxes rose in the 1990s under former Democratic President Bill Clinton and fell again in 2001 under former Republican President George W. Bush. Speaker Boehner's words echo those of last year's deadlocked debt negotiations that led to a downgrade of America's credit rating.
The president has often said we need a balanced approach, which in Washington means we spend more and you pay more.
President Obama's admonitions of partisan gridlock are also not new.
American people may have voted for divided government, but they didn't vote for a dysfunctional government.
And either they will, one of three possibilities is they address all of this huge broad range of debt drivers. The second possibility is, as you say, a temporary fix. They kick the can down the road. They don't really deal with the problem, they simply put it off.
The continuing resolution.
The continuing resolution, and they deal with it that way. The third way is that nothing is done, that no agreement is reached, and we do go over this fiscal cliff. Many economists believe that if all of the measures, all of the taxes that were, the tax cuts that would expire, if that comes to pass, if all the spending cuts actually come to pass, that the United States would go back into a recession.
And that was VOA's Michael Bowman with On Assignment's Philip Alexio. Now for our final story, we head to Russia, where 100 years ago, the country was home to the largest Jewish population in the world, about 5 million.
But the Nazi genocide, followed by massive immigration, radically cut Russia's Jewish population to about 150,000 people today. But Russia's Jewish heritage is being celebrated at a new museum in Moscow. We get that story from VOA's James Brooke.
On a quiet side street in Moscow, people are discovering a brand new attraction, Europe's newest and largest museum devoted to Jewish culture. Interactive exhibits draw people into Jewish culture, life, and history.
The museum is interesting in that it differs from others because a person can not only read something and understand it, but can also get a feeling of what occurred. Everything here is a channel to feeling.
The museum explores anti-Semitism under the Tsars, Jewish participation in the Communist Revolution, anti-Semitism and the Nazi genocide, and Jewish contributions to the Soviet war effort. Israeli President Shimon Peres was born before World War II in what is now Belarus. He flew from Israel to Moscow for the November 8 museum opening. Museum Chairman Baruch Gorin sees the new museum as a bridge between Russia and the 1 million Russian-speaking Jews of Israel. Israelis and Russians no longer need visas to visit each other's countries.
Russian Jews that live in Israel, and even on the second generation, they see themselves much more connected to the Russian culture, to Russian literature, to Moscow theaters.
Russian Muslim leaders visited the Jewish Museum on its opening day. Their reaction? To build a similar museum to educate Russians about their history and about Muslim contributions to modern Russia. James Brooke, VOA News, Moscow.
All right, Imran, well, it is that time again, time for us to say goodbye, but we will be back again next week with a look at the ever-changing relationship between the U.S. and China, with Burma now playing a role in that shift.
We'll also tell you about the recent discovery of the most distant galaxy in the universe, as reported by our VOA Science blogger.
If you missed anything on today's program or any of our past episodes, check us out on voanews.com and Facebook. In addition to the full episodes, we're now cutting each show into smaller segments so you can get the stories you want when you want them.
On behalf of everyone here, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next week.